Hello and welcome everybody, and special thanks to Larry Johnson uh,
Hi.
here on my channel. Larry is a veteran of the CIA and the State Department's Office of Counterterrorism. He also founded and managed something called the Berg Associates. Maybe you want to tell the audience a little bit about that, but it's basically what I understand some for an organization to be training people in certain issues. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, we did. I did training for the U.S. military on counterterrorism exercises,
Right.
but we also did financial investigations. So we did an investigation for the European Union, for example, of the tobacco companies for money laundering,
All right.
because British American Tobacco, Japan Tobacco, Philip Morris, they were all engaged with dealing with drug traffickers.
All right. Interesting. Did it lead somewhere?
They settled. Philip Morris settled with the European Union for 15 billion dollars, or
Right.
1.5 billion dollars. I take that back.
$1.5 billion. All right. But that's a hefty chunk of change.
That's
But
a that's a week that's a week of cash flow for those guys.
yeah, they make so much money. It's
Yeah.
incredible. All right. I thought we'd start off right off the bat with I'll ask you straight off. First question here. Do you think Israel had knowledge about what was going to occur on October the 7th when they went in and attacked civilians? For me personally, I see that as a little bit strange because I have had some connections with Mossad over the years. And to me, they
Mhm.
are well informed and they're good at what they're doing. What do you think? Did they have a notion about that this was going to happen on October 7th?
I don't think there's any doubt that they had the information,
Mm-hmm.
but having information in your possession doesn't mean that you've actually paid attention to it,
Right.
acknowledged it, or understood the importance of it. I mean, I know a friend of mine who was in Army intelligence. He walked in the morning of 9/11 after the attacks had taken place,
Right.
and they went through their message traffic. Back then, it was all in paper, and
Yeah.
they discovered there was an intercept from the National Security Agency that laid out what was going to happen
Uh-huh.
24 hours
Specifically
before it
laid it
happened.
out.
So
Yeah.
the intelligence was there. So that
Right.
there are different kinds of intelligence failures. In this
Uh,
case, Israel was warned, but the warnings didn't go anywhere and nobody paid attention.
there's, of course, some people speculating in that it was actually a false flag from Israel's point of view. I don't personally think it was that, but I
Yeah.
believe what you're telling me that they have the information, but they didn't pay that much attention to it.
Yeah.
That
Well,
seems,
if it, what's, let's say it's a false flag. The goal is to do what? To
yeah,
anger the rest of the world, to isolate yourself.
right.
That's not a very clever false flag. So some have argued using this as an excuse to get rid of the Palestinians in Gaza.
Mm,
But the reaction of the Israelis after the attack on October 7th was one of panic
yeah,
and indiscriminate fire.
right.
A lot of the casualties were caused not only among the Hamas attackers, but among the Israelis that had been taken hostage,
Yeah,
as well as some of the Israeli military personnel, were caused by the Israeli Defense Force.
yeah,
There's no doubt about that. You've got video footage of IDF Apache helicopters firing on
right,
vehicles fleeing the scene of the rave, and they're blowing them up. They don't know
right.
who's inside those cars. They're just firing
Exactly.
away. And
Yeah.
it turned out later there were a lot of Israeli kids inside those
Mm,
cars.
right. Oh, yeah. It's a terrible situation down there in many ways. Sweden has a peculiar problem, which is that Sweden has received very many Muslim migrants, and some of them, a few 100,000 at least, live in Sweden. And of course, they are filled with their hatred for Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also examples of that in the Swedish media, which is worse than the American mainstream media, by the way, because it's very state controlled and concentrated ownerships. The message is, we have a lot of Swedes in Gaza. Let's take them home. Let's save them. And these people can't speak Swedish, but they
Yeah.
do have Swedish, either a green card or a citizenship. So, and they go on vacations to Gaza. And one example was one older elderly gentleman. He was there his fourth time, and his daughter was given primetime television saying, "You got to save my father. He's in Gaza. Well, he's been there 4 times on vacation. Come on." So,
Yeah.
but that's a side point. Uh, Next issue, I listened. I think it was you and what was his name?
Ray McGovern.
Ray McGovern, yeah, with Judge Napolitano. A wonderful show. Congrats. About Blinken's tour,
Mm-hmm.
Secretary of State for the United States. In Swedish, we would call it foreign minister,
Right.
or equivalent. That wasn't quite a success, sir. How was that?
Yeah. He managed to get rebuffed at every turn. It didn't got treated with no respect. Whether it was, Bibi Netanyahu refusing to appear with him at a joint press conference.
Right.
And then 30 minutes after Blinken's press conference, Netanyahu comes out and completely rejects everything that Blinken said. And
he says something along the lines, "I don't agree with this guy at all in any
question. Everything that guy said is wrong." Basically.
Yeah, that's how he put it. Yeah.
Sort of like that scene from My Cousin Vinny. Then the meeting in Amman with all of the Arab, several of the most important Arab foreign ministers. Again, they made a point of rejecting everything that Blinken was saying, but they did want to appear at the press conference simply because they got to appear, beat him up in public. So they weren't going to miss a chance to, show their independence of America in that scene. And then when Blinken finally arrived in Turkey,
yeah,
they sent out, like the relative of a janitor to greet him at the airport. It was a nobody.
Yeah,
and that was quite a contrast with what had happened in Turkey the week before.
Right.
The Iranian foreign minister showed up, and the Turkish foreign minister was there to greet him, and then he was ushered in to see President Erdogan, got first-class treatment.
Right.
Blinken didn't. So,
yeah.
And that's one of the reasons that the CIA director, Bill Burns, subsequently went back to the region. He was, he's like that guy that walks out behind the elephants during the circus parade. He's got to scoop up all the mess that was left over. And that was sort of his job, to try to put things back together, to figure out, where there could be some cooperation.
All right. That was interesting. They reported it. Obviously, I follow as much media around the world as I can. We're unfortunately banned from Russia today. It's not available in Europe, because I always like to see both sides of the coin.
Sure.
But that's not possible. You can get a VPN system, and then the Swedish mainstream media, they publish pieces, of course, because they sit with all the news agencies and all of that, have all the information. They publish pieces of news from Russia, and the latest one was where a Russian journalist had a map and pointed out Stockholm as a target for a nuclear strike, because Sweden is joining NATO.
Right.
Which we talked about on this show with McGregor and others. He asked a very good question, Colonel McGregor. He asked Swedish audience the following: "You've been neutral for 200 years. Has it served your country well?" And that's a pretty easy question to answer.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
So that was that. But another rumor that's going around that I don't even know. I think was Washington Post that started talking about this Ukrainian group of people that supposedly had been behind the Nord Stream blow up. And
yeah.
I'm a former UDT,
Oh, okay.
and I'm educated to depths about that depth, 100 meters and so with special
Yeah.
equipment. And when I heard that, I just almost fell off my chair. They
Yeah.
supposedly had a sailing boat with 6 people, gone out and precision blew up on the depth of 80 meters, I think, both sides. And this is on Swedish and Danish economical territory at sea. And his name was supposed to be Roman Chervinsky, right?
Yeah. Chervinsky.
Chervinsky, yeah. And he was supposedly, according to this article, reporting directly to the high commander in Ukraine, Valery Shalushny. It was Zalushny.
Yeah. Zaluzhny. Zaluzhny.
Zalushny. What do you take on that? I just they're crazy.
Well,
It's something to divert the attention of who could perform a sabotage of this magnitude. That's my
yeah.
opinion.
Well, the really was the only thing new in this story was the name of Chervinsky,
Yeah.
because the Washington Post put out a story late 2022, earlier this year, where they claimed it was done as a response to the Cy Hirsch
Mm-hmm.
article, where Cy said no, it was a U.S. operation, which it
Right.
was.
Right.
So the Washington Post dreamed up that there was this yacht, some Ukrainians stole the yacht. And so when that first came out, I referred to it as the SS Minnow. I don't know if you ever saw the TV show Gilligan's Island that
Oh
was
yeah.
famous in the United States.
Yeah.
And so I said that this was like the Gilligan Island cruise with the skipper and Gilligan and Marianne and the professor.
I don't think this show ran in Sweden at all, but I lived in the United States briefly in the 80s, and that show was quite popular still.
Well, it manages to get around. I've been surprised how much universality there is attached to that particular show.
Mm.
But the point was that it was a nonsensical explanation. Well, now that you look at this Chervinsky character, he looks exactly like the character that played Gilligan, except he's more cadaverous and he's got sort of this crazed look. And they say, oh, he's a special operations guy, but Army Special Operations doesn't mean they know anything about deep sea diving,
exactly,
or underwater demolition.
No, come on, that's true. It's a long and tedious training to even manage to place underwater explosives. Of course, technology has evolved since I quit the Navy in '99. But we still had top of the line equipment at that time. We had top of the line training as well. The Swedish Navy is quite known for that. Well equipped, well modern equipment, and most of all, breathing apparatuses. That was absolutely top notch. But Cy Hirsch article, and another thing, I was glad to read Cy Hirsch analogy because there was so much going on, and it actually in June 2022, there was a big naval exercise in the Baltic Sea called Balt Ops 22. And me and a colleague, we recorded on marine traffic data tracking system many very strange movements in June, including U.S. frigates in this exact position. And then after the explosions in September, the Swedish have a ship called the Belos, which is top of the line. It's a dive rescue. It's equipped with small underwater subs. They can do complicated operations. And my opinion is that they were there absolutely immediately after the gas stopped bulging out, like a couple of days. And we're there and performed some kind of operation. I could only see their positions, all in exact positions of both areas, the one in the Danish zone and one in the Swedish zone. And my suspicion, which I haven't been able to prove yet, is that they were there for a cleanup operation.
Mm-hmm.
To clean up the remainders of these pipes to make it impossible to actually pinpoint who did it. But I mean, yeah. Biden said it, and Victoria Nuland said it. We'll stop this gas pipeline from Russia. And what's his name? Schultz in Germany. He stood by on the side of Biden when he did this and said Nord Stream will be no more. And I mean, Germany, he stood there like, yeah, well, fine, blow it up.
Well, you had the former foreign minister of Poland, Sikorski, praising it as well. But the story in the Washington Post this week, that's not what it was about. It wasn't so much to resurface the issue of Nord Stream as it was to pin the blame of it on Zelensky,
right?
Because there's a Game of Thrones battle for control now in Ukraine, and between the President Zelensky and his crowd and General Zelensky and the military. Mm-hmm. And what we saw the preceding week was Zelensky's articles in the. He was interviewed in The Economist. He did an op-ed in The Economist, and he wrote online for The Economist. Mm-hmm. So you don't just get to walk up to The Economist and say, "Hey, I'd like to publish an article."
No,
it doesn't happen that way. And it is The Economist has close historical ties with British intelligence, MI6.
Right.
So I viewed this as sort of with the MI6 blessing, they put Zelensky out there. And what he was saying was sort of a contradiction of Zelensky and things that Zelensky had been saying.
Right.
Well, that's why the CIA then, through using the Washington Post as a mouthpiece, got that article out, insisting that Zelensky was responsible. So it's clear to me, at least, that the CIA wants to they want to pin the blame on Zelensky. They want to try to protect Zelensky. The Brits would like to get rid of Zelensky. They're backing Zelensky. That's going to be a mess.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Bill Burns is going over on Thursday to meet, or I guess tomorrow, the 15th, to meet with Zelensky. And historically, whenever a CIA director comes to meet with a leader like that leader usually winds up being ousted or killed. So
yeah, not Zelensky. He's going to meet Zelensky.
No, he's going to meet Zelensky.
Zelensky, okay. But you wrote an article, I think yesterday, right, on your website, Sonar 21.
Right.
Everybody listening here in Sweden, go up and check this site out. And you're also on Substack and that information is on your Sonar 21 website. You wrote this article that there's voices that says Zelensky is expendable. I mean, you can get rid of him easily. Give us a little background of that.
Well, I published, there's someone pretty clever put a photo up showing Saddam Hussein, Manuel Noriega, Osama bin Laden, and Muammar Gaddafi.
Right.
All like they're in heaven, reaching down to Zelensky. And then I did a photo essay showing, there's a picture of George H.W. Bush when he was CIA director sitting with Manuel Noriega, because Manuel Noriega was a CIA source.
Yeah.
There's a picture of Donald Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense, in a tuxedo, sitting there grinning next to Saddam Hussein. Well, this is in the 1980s when the United States was supplying Iraq and Saddam Hussein with some of the technology that was used to create chemical weapons that were used to attack Iran. Right. And then there's a picture of Barack Obama shaking hands with Muammar Gaddafi because the United States had reached an agreement with Gaddafi. He gave up his weapons of his chemical weapons program, basically, and turned him over to the United States in exchange for getting out from under the doghouse. And in every single one of those cases, the United States ended up betraying those guys.
Yeah.
They're
all dead.
We locked up Noriega. We made sure that Saddam Hussein was hung, and Muammar Gaddafi wound up in the hands of the mob.
Yeah.
There's always been some allegations that the CIA worked with Osama bin Laden in the war against the Soviets in Afghanistan in the 1980s. Uh, I don't think there's a lot of evidence. I think bin Laden was sort of his own man in that
Yeah.
endeavor, but still, the point is that the United States has these relationships with certain foreign leaders, go back to Diem in Vietnam,
Hmm.
who wind up once they're sort of expendable, we'll wipe our nose with them and then toss them away like a Kleenex.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, when it comes to Muammar Gaddafi, Swedish Air Force was actually involved in trying to bomb residential palaces. The Swedish Saab system was involved and didn't get much attention in the media. No, but it's obvious if you look at this. I mean, another thing, didn't almost the same thing happen with ISIS or IS?
Well, ISIS was sort of a creature, a consequence of the U.S. invasion of Iraq.
Yeah.
And we had locked up the original founder of ISIS. And when he got out, he was angry and wanted revenge. And so he launched the ISIS movement. There are other groups that are Islamic extremists that have been designated as terrorists by the United States in Syria, that when the United States decided to turn on Bashar al-Assad and to try to eliminate Bashar al-Assad, you then found the United States actually sending weapons to Islamic extremists, to quote, terrorists. So, the United States is a very uneven policy with respect to terrorism. We embrace terrorists when it suits us.
Yeah. Yeah. A news flow is very difficult right now, at least with the sources I do have. So thank you again for coming up and coming on the program. But there have been reports also about, the United States still have active military bases, both in Syria, in Iraq,
right.
and around the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, which is, of course, 20% of the oil flow.
Right.
And some reports that I get say that Iranian-backed military forces have been attacking these bases, or some of them.
Yeah, no, yeah. They've been attacking with great regularity, and it's been intensifying. The U.S. bases they're in eastern Syria, western Iraq. There really is no justification to have those bases there.
Right.
But it's been part of the modus operandi of the United States.
Yeah.
We like to accuse other countries of being imperialist powers bent on spreading their trying to take over parts of the world. And we particularly accuse China and Russia of that. Yet the only country in the world that's been engaged with over 200 military operations in foreign countries since 1990 is the United States. And, just ask the people in Libya, in Syria, in Yemen, in Somalia, in Djibouti, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Bosnia, go down the list. So it's just, the United States really, I've become pretty outspoken about this because the number one country in the world for mayhem and murder has been the United States.
Yeah.
And these other countries that sort of enable them by not, trying to rein us in. It's endangered the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very unstable situation now worldwide with these conflicts going on. And Sweden, recently, a long time ago, Sweden signed what they call, how do you translate that? Like a host country agreement with the USA. It's from 10 years ago or so. Well, then just recently, the Swedish government signed an international cooperation agreement with the U.S. and NATO. No restrictions. American militaries can be placed on Swedish soil at their discretion.
Right.
They can place as many strategical weapons or whatever weapons they want to place here. It's open door. And I don't understand this really at all. We've always sort of been a proxy member of NATO. We're never on the Soviet side. I mean, I did my military career during the Cold War and when it ended. So, of course, we were trained to meet threat from the Soviet Union. That was the main purpose of all Swedish military equipment and personnel. But when the Berlin Wall went down and the Warsaw Pact got dissolved, then I don't see this. I don't see why NATO would be interested in provoking Russia. Sweden almost borders to Murmansk, north parts of the military. And then Norway has a direct border. Finland has a long land border to Russia.
Right. Yeah. No, the West, there's been a sort of the degenerate movement in the West. Those embracing just crazy things such as the whole transgender lifestyle, claiming that there's no such thing as male and female, that there's 72 genders, the failure to control drug use, rejection of religion, all of those when you combine it, and that's why they hate Russia now.
Yeah.
There's a time when the Soviet Union tried to eliminate churches. Now, Russia stands as probably one of the most Christian nations in the world.
Yeah.
And the attitudes, this animus in the West towards Russia, I believe is grounded in this complete rejection of Christianity, actually. Because, one of the criticisms directed at the Russians and at Putin in particular is their anti-homosexual stand. They're not out arresting homosexuals, but they simply state, hey, we believe in a heterosexual family and having that is the foundation of our society.
Yeah.
Well, the West, reacts in horror to that.
Yeah.
So it's one of these, real oddities. The United States and British intelligence have been on a sustained propaganda campaign to portray Vladimir Putin as this tyrant, this bloodthirsty revenge artist who's murdering people all over the world. And you can trace when that whole narrative started. And it started when Putin refused to acquiesce to Western pressure to let Georgia and Ukraine join NATO.
Exactly.
Because what the intent of America, the intent of Europe, if they can, they want to chop Russia up into various parts and rape it. Yep. They want to rape it economically, rape it financially. They want to. They can't stand it that Russia is one of the few countries, perhaps the only country in the world, that's independent in terms of natural resources.
Exactly.
It doesn't need a damn thing from any other country in order to make rocket engines or, plane engines.
No.
It's competent and can be self-sustained. West can't have that because the West wants to control.
Exactly. Yeah. Another thing that is not going so well for the so-called West is that Russia have plans with China opening up a sea route in the North Arctic areas where they would not be any more dependent on the Suez Canal.
Yeah.
They would not be dependent on the Panama Canal. And they see this, and the Chinese are already building freighters with icebreaker capacities. And this is the region of northern Russia, which stretches for so long. I mean, it's the largest area in the world. And all of these areas are pretty much unexploited like Novaya Zemlya, they have some things there, some mines. But this northern Arctic coast in Russia stretches half the globe, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
full of natural resources,
yeah.
everything from precious metals to rare metals like lithium, cobalt, nickel, all of it. There's
Right.
an abundance. Plus, they have oil. So the sanctions, we've seen how that worked.
Yeah,
That
yeah. To hurt Europe and set Russia free.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it went like shit hits the fan right in the face of the
Yeah,
European Union politicians. If normal people would have been in power, nobody would be that stupid. But politicians tend to be total idiots. I'm sorry, my
yeah.
bad French. All right. Uh, Thousands of thanks to you, Larry. I hope you can come on to the show some other time when things develop.
Sure,
Uh,
Hakan. It was a pleasure. I'd be happy to come back.
All right. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody that been watching this one. And it's going to come out with Swedish subtitles in a few days. All
Okay.
right.
Bye bye.